Hey everyone, in this video I want to talk to you about how I steam my sweater pieces so that I can weave in ends and seam them together. It's a pretty simple process, but I'm just going to take you through the steps. What I have here is a sweater in pieces. So I have two arms, two sleeves here, and then I have the main body pieces here. I have two of them, and you can see that they're relatively flat, ready to be seamed, and that is because I have steamed them so that they would lay relatively flat for the steaming process. I've done that with the sleeve here as well, and you can see it has some shaping to it, and it has a little bit of a bind off for the armpits, and you can see all of that because I've steamed it nice and flat. This is actually how that sleeve started. It looks like a big rolled up tube, and you can imagine trying to weave in ends or seam this piece to the back and front pieces would be really difficult if you're constantly trying to get it to unroll itself. So let's look at the steaming process. So I tend to use different size towels for different size projects. This is a smaller sleeve, so I just have a couple of dish towels here. They've been freshly laundered, and I've just gotten them wet in the kitchen sink. So you can see they have a lot of moisture in them. I have two of them here, and they're both wet. Damp, but not dripping, right? So I'm going to spread out the first towel underneath my sleeve, and I'm working on a surface that I don't have to worry about heat. This happens to be a stainless steel table. You can do this on top of your dining room table. I think I've done it on top of carpets, you know, anywhere that you're not too worried about a little bit of moisture, and you're not worried about the heat from the iron getting through and ruining anything. Now, the way I like to begin this is usually to lay it out. You can see it really wants to roll. So the first steaming pass is usually just a very rough pass. You know, just try to get it opened up a little bit. Take your other towel and start applying a little bit of pressure on top of that sleeve as you're opening it up. Maybe roll back the towel, unroll your sleeve, roll the towel on top of it a little bit like that. You're just going for a rough steam to try to get some of that crinkle out. I have an iron here. It has no water or anything, and it is set on the highest setting, and it's hot, so I want to be careful here. And you're going to apply the iron to the wet cloth, and depending on the temperature of the water and temperature of your iron, you might see some steam coming off. You can see the steam coming off here. And the water that's in the towels is serving just like a steam bath. Now, the reason I use two towels is because I don't want to apply the iron directly to the yarn or to the fabric. This protects the fabric to a certain extent because you have this layer of wet towel and another layer of wet towel, and the actual knitting fabric is in between the two. If you were working especially with an acrylic yarn or something like that, you definitely don't want to apply a hot iron directly to that. It will melt. That is, especially if you have an acrylic yarn that is mostly a plasticky kind of yarn. Now you will notice that I'm keeping the iron moving. I'm not generally just setting it there and leaving it for any amount of time because depending on your yarn or your fabric underneath there, it could melt, it could stick to the towels. You also want to think about the towels, making sure you're using color-safe towels. So I wouldn't want to use a bright red towel with a white sweater, for example, or towels that I had never washed before for this kind of process. You want to make sure they're nice and broken in, clean, and they're not going to bleed colors onto your fabrics. And we're just going to keep doing this for a little while until we start to get some of that water and some of that steam from the towel into the fabric, and as that happens and as the hot iron hits it, it's going to start relaxing. And you can see here, look at this, we've got quite a relaxed sleeve. The other way to do it, I'll show you the other option here, is to flip your sleeve over, especially once it's started to relax a little bit, and you can use the moisture that's already in the sleeve now and the fact that it started to relax to kind of get it to, it just kind of wants to stick to that wet towel underneath on both sides. I will put my wet towel back on top and go for it again. If you need to, you can also re-wet your towel throughout this process. So if it starts to get dry because it's been heated so much, you can re-wet it as you go. And the other thing to think about with your towel fabric is you want to make sure that your towel itself doesn't have a lot of plasticky stuff in it that's going to melt or adhere to your fabric. So here we go. That is a pretty good looking sleeve. I can even do a little blocking here if I wanted to relax the ribbing, make sure that I have, you know, this is all taken care of, looks pretty good, and it looks good on the other side. So normally I would just lay this flat somewhere now. If you have a sweater drying rack or something like that, it's also just fine, I think, to put this over the back of a kitchen chair while you're letting it dry a little bit. You'll notice that the steaming process does not leave your fabric pieces wet, just a little bit damp. So I wouldn't want to put this away somewhere in like an airtight tub until I was sure that it was actually dry. But I feel like at this point, you can tell it's not very wet. You could just start the seaming process right away without any trouble. It's not like you're working with soaking wet wool. It's just a little bit damp from the towels, and you can see that it's relaxed really nicely from the sleeve roll that we had before. So that's how I steam out pieces. If you're working with an adult sweater, you could use a full-size bath towel, for example, and get it moist and then do the same trick with it. It would work just fine. But this sweater is ready to be seamed. All the pieces are nice and relaxed, and they're going to go together really nicely.